There are many talented tight ends in the NFL today, but there's two individuals that have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. And those players are George Kittle
Smells like football, baby.
and Travis Kelce.
Woo, baby.
Yet, even after thousands of receiving yards, dozens and dozens of touchdowns, and even a Super Bowl matchup between the two, there's one question that still remains. Which one is superior? We find out on this week's 5-Minute Feuds. Now let's start with George Kittle. When I say there's a lot to like about him, I mean there's a lot. For starters, he's already received All-Pro honors twice, which is even more impressive considering Garoppolo is the best quarterback he's ever had. In 2019, Kittle finished with 85 receptions, 1,053 yards, and 5 touchdowns, helping San Francisco secure the #1 seed in the NFC. The tight end only dropped one of his 86 catchable targets, which was first among tight ends. He also led the league in broken tackles with 20. But it's not only his receiving abilities that wow the opposing defenses. It's his blocking as well. Kittle has established himself as one of the best, if not the top blocking tight end in the league. We'll take a closer look into that in a minute, but let's move on to the other contestant, Travis Kelce. Last year, Kelce hauled in 1,229 yards, which was good for 4th in the entire NFL. And after looking at both his stats and tape, it's not hard to understand why he's excelled so much in the passing game. In 2019, Andy Reid had lined Kelce up at the wide receiver position 476 times. That was second among all tight ends. Kelce has also shown he's very versatile and has even found himself in the backfield on numerous occasions. On top of all this, Kelce has only missed one game over the last 6 years. That's a major key that a lot of people undervalue. So here we are, two individuals with two different styles. Who gets the nod? To me, this question came down to what does the best tight end in the NFL consist of today? You see, just like in any sport, time passes and things evolve. In the NBA, the three-point shot has become much more popular than it has ever been. And in the NFL, we're seeing more mobile quarterbacks instead of the traditional pocket passers. This goes for the tight end position as well. It's completely evolved thanks to players such as Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham, and now these two. With that factored in, I've singled out my top 3 key attributes when trying to decide who is the superior tight end. My first is the blocking portion, and I'm rolling with George Kittle. Why? Well, because of this, or this, and yeah, this. We know today's NFL has become more of a passing league over the past few years, but you still can't ignore that having a good running game goes hand in hand with a team's success, and that starts with the offensive line and the tight ends, which are both positions that it looks like George Kittle can play. Now, as for the receiving standpoint, you have to give it to Travis Kelce. As I previously mentioned, Kelce ranked 4th in the entire NFL in receiving yards. This made it the 4th straight year that he eclipsed 1,000 or more yards. That's an NFL record now. And to put that into perspective on how impressive that actually is, Tony Gonzalez had only 4 1,000-yard seasons in his 17-year career. 17! Travis Kelce has had 4 consecutive seasons, and it only took him 6 years. So, much like Kittle with blocking, picking Travis Kelce from the receiving standpoint was not close for me. Now, the tiebreaker for me was looking at each player's individual value that they have for their team. It's a little difficult to fully measure how valuable Travis Kelce is for the Chiefs due to the fact that, well, we haven't really seen them without him. It also doesn't help that he's surrounded by a future Hall of Fame head coach in Andy Reid, an MVP quarterback who just threw 50 touchdowns, and one of the best receiving corps in the NFL. I understand that's not his fault, but it just becomes a little bit more difficult for myself when evaluating the two. As for Kittle, I want to take a look at weeks 1 through 9 last season for the 49ers, which they had Kittle on the field for. Now, let's compare that to weeks 10 and 11, after he was sidelined with a knee injury. The difference between these two slates is massive. Look at the turnovers. Look at the sacks allowed. Look at the rushing yards. Not to mention, if it weren't for a last-second touchdown by Garoppolo against the Cardinals, they would have gone 0-2 during his absence. As much as I want to label them 1A and 1B, I have to give the victory to George Kittle. Without Kelce, I still believe that the Chiefs would be a competent team. But as we've seen, when Kittle isn't on the field for San Francisco, they don't look good. The drop-off in team production shows how valuable Kittle is in numerous ways, as a tight end, wide receiver, or even a blocker, which is why I'm giving him the victory on this week's 5-minute feuds.